The Middle East is on fire, but this fire did not start randomly. Maps drawn decades ago, strategies written, and decisions made are now playing out on the ground. And at the center of this picture stands a small country with a population of 9 million, roughly the size of New Jersey, Israel, a state that has not gone through a single decade without war since its founding in 1948, that has emerged stronger from every conflict and has become the undisputed most powerful military force in the region today. But to understand Israel, it is not enough to talk only about tanks, missiles, and wars, because what is happening here is not just a territorial war. It is also a religious claim thousands of years old, a struggle for existence spanning decades, and the most complex geopolitical chess game of the 21st century. And right now, the pieces are moving so fast that predicting where this chess game will go has become nearly impossible. Today, I will tell you about Israel's Middle East plan. The founding of the State of Israel was not a coincidence. Behind it stood a religious narrative thousands of years old. According to Jewish belief, the land of Israel is the Holy Land that God promised to Abraham and his descendants. This belief appears repeatedly in the Torah and forms the core of Jewish identity. The movement known as Zionism transformed this religious belief into a political project in the 19th century. Founded under the leadership of Theodor Herzl, for Jews exhausted by centuries of oppression and discrimination in Europe, this movement set a single goal: to have a homeland for the Jewish people. In 1917, the British Balfour Declaration supported the establishment of a Jewish homeland in Palestine. In 1948, the State of Israel was declared. But for the Arab and Muslim population that had lived on those same lands for centuries, this event was a Nakba, meaning a great catastrophe. Hundreds of thousands of Palestinians were forced to leave their homes, and from that day on began the unresolvable contradiction of the Middle East. The conflict of two peoples, two religions, and two histories over the same land. The religious dimension is not only on the Jewish side. For Islam as well, Jerusalem is an extremely sacred city. Al-Aqsa Mosque is the first direction toward which Muslims prayed before the Qibla changed, and is believed to be the place where the Prophet, Muhammad's ascension to heaven, took place. For this reason, the question of sovereignty over Jerusalem is not merely political but a religious matter that directly concerns 1.8 billion Muslims. And this reality is one of the factors that has made every negotiation between Israel and the Arab world unsolvable from the very beginning. What makes this conflict even more complex is not only the political calculations between states, it is the deep fractures within societies. When looking at Israeli society, it is not possible to see a homogeneous structure. Inside the country, there are serious tensions between secular Jews, religious Jews, and ultra-Orthodox Jews. There are social inequalities that have persisted for decades between Ashkenazi Jews and Mizrahi Jews. And there are Arab Israelis who make up approximately 20% of Israel's population. These are people who are Israeli citizens but frequently express that they are treated as second-class citizens. When the Netanyahu government attempted judicial reform in 2023, Israeli citizens who had never before witnessed such massive street protests took to the streets. Hundreds of thousands of people protested for weeks, believing that the democratic system was being interfered with. These images clearly showed the rest of the world the deep political fracture within Israel. When looking at the Palestinian side, there is a similar division. The Palestinian Authority governing the West Bank and Hamas controlling Gaza represent two different Palestinian political realities. These two structures, one embracing the path of negotiation and the other preferring armed resistance, are in deep competition with each other. And this division continues to be a factor that weakens from the outset every negotiation aimed at establishing a Palestinian state. To understand Israel's Middle East strategy, it is necessary to know several fundamental doctrines. The first is the Begin Doctrine. In 1981, Israeli Prime Minister Menachem Begin bombed Iraq's nuclear reactor and declared the following: Israel will not allow any hostile state in the region to develop nuclear weapons. This doctrine remains valid today and forms the cornerstone of Israel's approach to Iran's nuclear program. The second is the Dahiya Doctrine. This military strategy derived from the 2006 Lebanon War states the following: Israel will target the civilian infrastructure of enemy forces as well because organizations like Hezbollah are embedded within civilian structures. The third is the Abraham Accords strategy. These accords, presented as one of Netanyahu's greatest foreign policy achievements, were signed in 2020. Normalization was achieved with Arab countries such as the UAE, Bahrain, Sudan, and Morocco. And this strategy meant detaching traditional Arab solidarity from the Palestinian cause. In other words, Israel succeeded in bringing Arab countries together under an alliance framework against Iran. On the morning of October 7, 2023, Hamas carried out the largest attack in Israeli history. This attack was the greatest security failure Israel had experienced since the 1973 Yom Kippur War. Israel's response did not take long. The Netanyahu government launched a full-scale ground operation in Gaza. By the end of 2024, more than 45,000 Palestinians had lost their lives. 1.9 million people had been displaced, and 70% of Gaza's infrastructure had been destroyed. This attack displaced all of Israel's strategic calculations in the Middle East. The normalization process established through the Abraham Accords came to a halt, and Israel was drawn into a multi-front war simultaneously facing Gaza in the south, Hezbollah from the north, Houthi attacks from the east, and Iran-backed groups. The war between Israel and Iran had for decades been conducted through proxies. Iran supported Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in Gaza, the Houthis in Yemen, and various Shia militias in Iraq and Syria. Israel, meanwhile, avoided directly targeting Iran in response to these forces, until April 2024. In April 2024, Israel bombed the Iranian consulate in Damascus. This was an extremely controversial step from the perspective of international law, because diplomatic missions are inviolable. Iran responded to this attack on April 13, 2024 by striking Israeli territory directly with more than 300 drones and ballistic missiles. This was Iran's first direct military attack on Israel and demonstrated that a historic threshold had been crossed. Israel, with the help of the United States, Britain, France, and Jordan, intercepted 99% of this attack. Israel then carried out a limited retaliatory strike against military facilities in the Iranian city of Isfahan. Both sides attempted to keep the escalation under control. However, as 2025 approached, the situation became far more complex. Following Israel's large-scale elimination of Hezbollah leaders and command chains in Lebanon, Iran had lost its most powerful proxy in the region. This loss left Iran facing two options: either pull back or enter the field directly. Fighting in Gaza is still ongoing. The humanitarian crisis is described as one of the most severe humanitarian catastrophes in the world, and a permanent ceasefire has not yet been achieved. Hezbollah's Secretary General Nasrallah was killed in an Israeli airstrike in 2024, and the organization received one of the heaviest blows in its history. On the Syrian front, Israel took advantage of the power vacuum created by the collapse of the Assad regime, struck numerous military facilities inside Syria, and established a buffer zone by moving beyond the Golan Heights. This step sparked major controversy in the international community. On the Iranian front, the most critical development is the nuclear program. Iran's uranium enrichment level reached 60% as of 2025. This is dangerously close to the 90% threshold required for weapons production. With Israel consistently keeping the option of a military strike against Iranian nuclear facilities on the agenda, the position of the United States continues to be decisive. Looking toward 2026, three critical scenarios are being discussed. The first is Israel launching a preemptive strike against Iranian nuclear facilities. This scenario could drag the region into a full-scale war. The second is a new agreement limiting Iran's nuclear program under international pressure. The third is the continuation of the current situation as a frozen conflict, meaning the parties continuing to wear each other down through small-scale confrontations while avoiding a major war. Israel's Middle East plan can be summarized in a single sentence: not allowing any threat to take root in the region. But the cost of this plan is growing heavier by the day. International isolation is increasing, domestic political tensions are escalating, economic costs are rising, and more lives are being lost with each passing day. From a religious perspective, the polarization this conflict has created in the Jewish, Muslim, and Christian worlds is far deeper than at any point in the 20th century. From a sociological perspective, both Israeli and Palestinian societies are accumulating trauma upon trauma, and this accumulation is projected to continue for generations. From a political perspective, the following can be said. What is needed for lasting peace in the Middle East is not more weapons, not more war, and not more sanctions. What is needed is a genuine belief in a solution in which both sides can live with dignity. And right now, that belief is nearly non-existent on both sides. If you have watched this video all the way to this point, it means you understand the Middle East not only through headlines, but through its history, its religion, its sociology, and its strategy. Follow this channel, because this story is not over. There are many more chapters to come.